It's a pleasure for me to be here and to present one of the services of ICARUS. When we remember what we heard yesterday in this little folder we have here, we have Monasterium we heard about, and we have Matricula we heard about, and the third one, the service for the private material to get it into visibility. This is Topoteka, as we started, or even when we translated to the other languages, for example here in Croatia, it's Topoteka. I'm afraid I need a little help because my presentation I put onto the notebook yesterday disappeared. I don't know where it went to, so I have to put it onto this machine once more. Okay. The theme of Topoteka is let the crowd work. That means Topoteka is something that's not in a whole run by an institution, but it's something to invite the public to show their material and to make their material accessible. And starting with this picture here is one example that I think it's crucial for the whole project. Why to start with such a picture? It's something that's normally lost. It's not merchandised. If this is found in some funds, it's like rubbish unless you're interested in the history of clothing or maybe in the history of how looked a deck of cards in former days, or how a table looked like, or how the cup of tea looked like, and so on. So when you get the closer look to the pictures, when you approach what is visible here in detail, even there's an umbrella in the background, it gets somehow, on one hand, touching for the people, on the other hand side, interesting for those being interested in a specific history that goes beyond just the local history. And even one step farther is that this picture I explored in one of old boxes at home, that in fact the man in the middle ground is my grandfather. And so this of course is a personal example, but it can be multiplicated to the other people. And you have a lot of such pictures where you find people related to the content of these pictures, and when they get touched, they might get the impetus to do something to make it accessible with joy, to show what's in their homes. So the Topoteka mainly goes to show private material and activate the private knowledge that of course is diminishing with the people passing by. And getting all this material into sight, of course there arises the question of how to do the things necessary to do so. So how to explore the fonts, how to digitize, how to save the information, of course how to index all this, because creating metadata is a lot of work. So digitization is, I would say, the minor work of the whole thing, and how and where to make it accessible. And with all these questions, I think it's a question for you as institutions or members of institutions, how to do this sustainable and with low cost. And that's the point where the crowd comes into sight to say, with the joy of the people working in such projects or even structures, you can do very much on a local base that could not be done with the low budgets and abilities of the institutions. So, talking to you, I can look back now on 3 years of Topoteka. We started in Austria as a private initiative. Now we have 40 such Topotekas online. Of course, this is a start. I can't compare this with other large projects, but the growth is even quicker. We have now about 28,000, more than 28,000 visible records. And visible records does not mean we have pictures tagged with 3 search terms. That means that there really were people interested in the content of the picture, and there are a lot of search terms and informations to every item we have visible. In Topoteka now there are more than 130,000 search terms, and we have nowadays about 300 administrators working in their local Topoteka. So let's have a look at the structure. Of course, it would be always a good start to have in front of a Topoteka an institution. This might be a museum, this might be an archive. Interesting, it's for negotiating when there comes new material physically that people want to donate, where it goes to. So that should be, I think, in the first place an archive, because the work in Topoteka is something that relates to archival work more than to museums. So the museum can have some connection, of course, with municipalities. We have a lot of Topotekas without institutions, because in small villages there are no institutions like archives or museums, and so it's run by the municipality. So the responsibility for a Topoteka is not a private person or a private group of persons, but it's an organization like a municipality, and that creates the trust in the thing that happens here. That it's not somebody who wants to get things or get rights for things to publish and to sell again. This should not be in this case. Of course, there are some costs behind to run the whole systems, and we have pretty examples where even local firms or industry comes and say, we finance this for a certain period, we have our logo on it, so that for the institutions it could be something that's really without any costs. And from these institutions comes the animation for the people, the Topotekas, that actually work in such an archive. And these people need to be interested people, as I pointed out in the beginning, not scientists, that could be just people being touched by the theme and who want to play a certain role in their village or in their area. So we can say they are interested laypersons. And they can activate the public by certain tools to explore the private funds and to digitize together, or they do it, and of course most of the work is indexing and displaying in the visible Topoteka. So we have in fact 3 players in the system. We have the institution, and we have the people working, and we have the crowd outside. And these institutions, and I think this is important for you, and so I point this out once again, it's just patronizing. It's not actually working. I often have the misunderstanding that putting things in an online archive is something that has to be done by an institution, and the institution should show everything of content that's in the archive, but this should not be the aim. I think the aim should be to create something lasting with easy access for the public, and to create processes to get the contribution and the awareness of the public to work on the documentation of their own history. So, as pointed out here and shown here, the operation of the whole system is in the hands of the players outside the institutions, with the volunteers. And a very important tool is all that makes the crowd work. So the Topotekas can ask questions to the public and ask for guest work from outside. So these are tools I can show afterwards that there's stimulation to work in a way for the others, that they can see what they contributed immediately. We often have these problems with regional projects when there are certain topics that are published with a question, please give us some old pictures, give us some information, as we had now 1 and 2 years ago for the topic of World War I. And there came a lot of material to the publishers or to the scientists, and people were discontent when they could not see what they contributed. And in the web, of course, this never is a problem, that the people can see what they contribute. Well, I'm taking now one of these Topoteka as one little stone. You can do, of course, a large mosaic, as now this happens initially in Austria, that all these separate Topotekas create a network that we care for, that the Topotekas are in contact with each other if they want, and to give information to all of them. So let's have a short look at this tool, how it works for these who want to show something. It's an online archive, that means you do not need any software on computers, and it's made for the public participation. That means it has to be very easy to operate, and beside the function as an electronic tool, it's also the community that's created here in the background. From outside, you see the visitor's site with the overview, with the map as a base for the things, and you have the gallery view for the details of information, and for the administration you have just a list to fill in the things that has to be written here. I will show you afterwards briefly. So one of the main character is that you have to keep it easy. We have a lot of elder people working in Topotekas that are interested in the history. Normally that starts about 50 and older, and there's not such good ability to work on notebooks, so it has to be easy to use even for the administration. But let's look up what happens for the visitors first, because that's the first contact even for the Topotekas to say, yes, this is a tool I'm interested to work in. So it has to be easy somehow. We have 3 parameters. look up the things in here. Of course, we have the search terms, we have the timeline. You can have different timelines if you have different interesting epochen. So it's the date, and of course we have the map to search on. Because the place is something, I would say, it's the nameless items. For example, here we see the difference to Wikipedia. Wikipedia is something you need terms to look up. You need to have some information on something. But many people say, well, let's just see what we find from that region. And that's something where you need, of course, a map without any terms to search for, and you just say, let's see what happened here. Are there any items that illustrate that area? Or, of course, you have the addresses. In it, you get the filter for this term. You can take the things in the picture, as you see on the left side on the house. And of course, and that's, I think, a major objective of that what's done here, that is that we have the chance for the minor things. So normally such a picture would be tagged with the main objects, of course, but when the people browse through a picture when tagging, they see so many details, as I showed on the first picture, that even these should be tagged. Of course, the persons, we have a sort of sport in the villages that the older people try to find every name for every person on the old pictures from the schools, from the kindergartens, to have all people like statues to remember for the past. And now going further than local history, this is an example that I can show that we have terms that's interesting for more than for the local history. For example, design, or let's say how surfaces were decorated in former days, carpets, cloth, even on such a picture. Such a picture is something that's very rare, because you see a very normal street scene. Nobody would take a picture of such a scene in the former years unless there was an accident or something happened that was unusual. And just these usual pictures have something in it you can point out. And one of the interesting things here, of course, again, is this. And now imagine when you have in a lot of topotekas such search terms, you can have a real large fund of things you never thought you could look up from the history. That's more than local history. That's more than just looking at the houses, how they looked in 1960 or 61. Of course, we have the possibility to have the overlays of small pieces of maps. So that's the question, also how to combine with larger maps. Because I think there's very much philosophy in it, to have these things combined. You have the service, we use such services, and I would be happy to create something, and so I think that's a good effect to meet here, to see what's done by others and how we can combine this. Well, very important for us is to see not only the position of an object, but also the position of the photographer and the position or the angle of view. I hope you can see it here in green. Yes, it's visible that on the photograph on the left side, this is just a little part of it. You can say on the left side it was the photographer and he looked to the right side. And this in this place is very interesting for the people, of course, because where you see a tree now in the middle of the picture, there used to be a building you see in the background of the photograph. So for scenes that changed, this is a very important information. You can take it a picture we've seen already, and we have it for any language you want. So Mr. Leidek will show in Croatian. We just need an actual list to have the surface translated. Of course, not for the content. Well, to work in such a Topoteka, how to organize that work. We have Topotekas with a single Topoteka, just one person working in it, getting the material from the public, nice examples. I remember when they report that every day there's something, or every second day, like Robert, something is in my post box, because the persons are known and people bring the originals to be taken into the archive. Or we have the groups. Even this is an interesting work to see how the groups establish in the villages, how there are certain topics for certain people. For example, one makes the houses, the other is interested in the people, and so it's a pretty process created. Of course, for these people we have the network with the newsletter, we have a blog, and we have annual, now it was once per year, the Topoteka's Day, where people meet, and we have a work group to share the environment. Well, as last point here to show you is what possibilities we have for collaboration with the public. When you have a look at the Topoteka, you will see that we have entries with a question mark on it. That means you can answer without being logged in to the questions that show up when you go on to them with the mouse. You get the boxes to write your answers, and these answers go to the Topotekas and they have to look at. So it's not a direct contribution, it's not shown for the public, it has to be checked by the people in the administration. The second, of course, is to create donations, to get donations from the people, digitized or in original, but the originals are always given back to the people. The only thing that should be taken from the people is the right to publish in this archive. There is no wish to make publications or something, because I think it's important to get the trust from the public. The only thing that happens here is we want to show together our community, our village, and that's it, not more. And for these donations, we have a form that people can write in, and so it's on paper and fixed that the right is donated to publish. Then, of course, we have the canal of donating digitized material. That means we have guests that can work in just on their entries. Of course, they have to sign, because publishing is an rechtlicher Akt. It's something of justice, you know, all the rights that has to be managed. So we have this form in the background. And of course, always the ability is to join the work groups, to join the administrations. You can have different access to work in. You can work on all entries, only on the new entries, or only on these that you have entered by yourself. A handbook is available, of course, and it's important that you have a very clear workflow. That's why it's just one line for one item, and we have all the necessary cells to fill in to meet the standard of ISAT. Well, and to run a separate Topoteka is something that appeared as a question several times when the people see that they have different places in a village, different small quarters, that they say, oh, that should be a new one. And sometimes in the last weeks, that was a question people requested. Well, let's have a look on what you can do with such an initiative. It should be something that's not marked as a project. It should be something that appears like an institution that lasts, like an infrastructure, not with a timeline. So the trust will come from the people, and the process to get into the run is always have the municipalities, have the institutions in the background with a start event to the public, something for the press, that it's shown something is happening. We had all this in the small villages, not even in the small, in all villages, there was the Bürgermeister, mayor, was there, and municipality people were there to have really an official start of it. You get the local PR, and when it has started, you can do very much small projects. For example, the events for the seniors. We have several regular tables where once per month the Topotekas in the villages do some evening, they get new material, they do the digitizing in the evening, the people take the photographs home again. And we had now several anniversary events that's not made by us, but that's always done locally because it's interesting for the people out there. And we have some ideas that with such a Topoteka could be done a greater project. In Austria we have this leader project. I don't know if this works here. This is from the EU to help some regions for tourism and for networking between villages. And there we have some of these projects run, and they use the Topoteka as something that goes across the village borders, and so they have some cultural asset that the project could be run. So the benefit for all working with these archives, Topoteka, is to have something that goes beyond the normal chronicle museum and exhibition, of course. I think the right question could be, when you do as an institution an exhibition, for example, or when you started digitizing, there are rising questions like, we have collected now several items from the public, what to do with them after exhibition. Or we have digitized. We have to digitize because our material is in very bad condition in small museums. We have that question often, but what comes afterwards? We do not have the ability to get that material processed with metadata. So they give that content to the public to do, or to interested persons, to the crowd in the village, to have a first indexing. You don't need the scientists for doing this. You do need, I think, mostly the people that know the places, that they know where the picture belongs to and what's on it, and that can't be done everything by the institutions. And of course, always there comes the question, the exhibition is over, but we would like to keep the accessibility for the things we've done. We have the linkability, of course, with the search terms, and I think one asset is to have a modern and very low threshold entry and accessibility to the cultural heritage of the minor items, because when you have the question in the evening, for example, how was the building looking like 20 years ago, you won't keep that question up to the next day and look up when the village archive is opened once a month and then where to look up that. And these are the questions you can get a new kind of people looking into local history when it goes quickly with these kind of questions. And that might improve the identification for a place people live in. So I think it could be time to take the advantage of that crowds work, even for this that should be done in the institutions. You can create these local projects, and so at the end, the idea is let's hand over our memories to the next generation in a way that will be used by the next generation, because the means of communication are now digitized. You will find Topoteka EU as the web address for the main information on the Topoteka. And so, thank you for listening.